Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the Face Off Sports Network. I am your host, Pete Nova. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to talk about three players that you should avoid in your fantasy football drafts this upcoming season. Now, we are a few months away, so things are going to change. ADPs are going to move around, but we do want to talk about some players to avoid at their current prices. And, these guys may rise, they may fall, but we still think you should avoid them. So without further ado, we're going to get into our first player. So the first guy on this list is going to be Devon Achane. Now, Devon Achane's ADP is eighth for total ADP for running backs, and he is 21st overall in terms of draft position. Now, if you're going to be taking Devon Achane in fantasy drafts, you have to be comfortable swallowing that price tag. He's going to go in the top half of the second round or middle of the second round, and he's a very exciting player. Really love him, and if he could be a little bit bigger, a little bit healthier, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with him at this price tag. Last season, he was extremely efficient and a very exciting player. He was finished as the RB one time last year. He finished as a top five running back four times last season. And he was also in the top 10 finish five times in a total of 11 games. He had the highest yards per touch in football, 7.7. He was first in breakaway run rate at 12.6%. And he was also fifth in fantasy points per game. Now, you might be sitting there saying, well, why wouldn't I want to roster this guy? And, if the scenario and the situation was a little bit different, I would say, yeah, go for it, but just not at this price tag. The thing about Devon A Chain is he left two games last season due to injury. He also missed a total of six games last season. Now, this was, came back from injury, got hurt again, missed a few games, came back from injury, got hurt again. So this wasn't just got injured once and then missed a couple of games and then came back and finished the season. He was injured very often and he's not a big body back. In four total games last season, he had 50% or more snap share. And Raheem Mostert just signed an extension. Raheem Mostert is very familiar with Mike McDaniels from his time in San Francisco. And Raheem Mostert only had three games where he saw under 50% snap share. He played a total of 15 games last year. He was on the field a lot. He scored 21 total touchdowns. This is a guy that's just not going to go away. They signed him to an extension for a reason. They also brought in Jalen Wright, who, profiles similar to Devon A Chain with his speed. He could get a little bit better in his route running. But Jalen Wright is going to be involved in this offense as well. And so it's just another mouth to feed. And there are a lot of mouths on this offense. I just worry that Devon A Chain with the injuries, he's going to put up his big games, no doubt about that. But can he sustain a healthy season with all these touches? And that might be why they brought in Jalen Wright and they brought Mostert in because they want to ease the workload for Devon A Chain and have him in there as just an explosive back that they can use, not as more, probably a little bit more than a change of pace guy, because he's going to see the field a little bit more than just that. But I just worry about the volume that he's going to get and if he can hold up for the full season and just the guys that are in this room next to him. Now, we're going to move on to our second player here in Justin Jefferson. Now, it's crazy to have Justin Jefferson on a list in 2024 saying that you should avoid drafting him. Now, when I say avoid drafting Justin Jefferson, he's going right now as the fourth wide receiver off the board, and he's going fifth overall in fantasy drafts. Now, I get it. Look, he hasn't finished outside of the top five in fantasy points per game in the last three seasons. He plays in a very wide receiver friendly offense with Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell comes from the Sean McVay tree, and Sean McVay has always had wide receiver friendly offenses. It's not a surprise that with Kevin O'Connell being at the helm of this offense, that it is very wide receiver friendly. But we also have to keep in mind that Kirk Cousins is no longer here in Minnesota. And Kirk Cousins was also a very wide receiver friendly quarterback. He gave us a lot of wide receiver one finishes for wide receivers over the years. And right now, we have Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy as the quarterbacks of this offense. As it stands today on 5/23, I think Sam Darnold probably starts maybe 5, 6, 7 games this season, and then they probably turn the reins over to JJ McCarthy. If JJ McCarthy doesn't see the field this season, he's probably progressing pretty badly, or Sam Darnold is lighting the world on fire, and this take will probably burn up in my face. And if so, so be it. But there's a lot of murkiness of how this offense will look. Last season, they threw the ball fourth most in the NFL, right? So you think, well, that's pretty good for wide receivers, right? But I don't think they're going to expose JJ McCarthy to that kind of passing volume. And I don't think they'll do the same with Sam Darnold either. He's never been in an offense, Sam Darnold, where he was passing at that kind of volume in his career. And they also brought in Aaron Jones. I think that's a statement that they know they're going to want to lean on the running game more this season. Last year, Alexander Madison, Cam Akers, they just had guys that just were not cutting it. And I just don't see this offense, being as explosive and passing the football nearly enough to support this price tag for Justin Jefferson. There's just too many questions right now. Jordan Addison is going to be stepping into a second season. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't necessarily worry me too much, but it's probably the best competition that Jefferson has had outside of Adam Thielen, who, has been gone for, okay, about a year or two. But I just don't see this price tag making sense for me. And I will be avoiding Justin Jefferson at that price in fantasy football this coming season. Now, moving on to our third player, it's going to be Rashad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Rashad White is the 12th running back off the board in fantasy drafts currently, and he's the 33rd player off the board overall. Now, that's about a third round pick, somewhere in the mid third rounds, maybe even late. And if you drafted Rashad White last season, you were pretty excited and happy about it. You got him for pretty cheap. He wasn't going very high in fantasy drafts. People didn't really know what that backfield was going to look like. They had some competition there with Tucker and some other players that just didn't pan out. And because of that, Rashad White saw a very large opportunity share, seventh in the NFL for opportunity share, ninth in total targets at 70, and he was 10th in fantasy points per game. I am not going to sit here and knock that. He had an awesome season. And if you drafted him last year, you were extremely happy because he exceeded expectations and his ADP. But the reality of the situation is Rashad White was not a good NFL running back last season. That's just the bottom line. He was a very good pass catcher, but in terms of a runner, he was not very good. He was very inefficient. 46th in yards per carry at 3.6 last season, 33rd in yards per touch at 4.6, and 47th in breakaway run rate. Now, those are not statistics that NFL coaches are going to look at and say, yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy I want to lean on and, you know, run the football with consistently with at this kind of volume, but they didn't really have many other options last year. Now, this offseason, they bring in Bucky Irving from Oregon, who profiles very similar to Rashad White. I was actually pretty surprised. I thought they were going to bring in a banger, a Marshawn Lloyd, one of those bigger backs in this rookie class, but they brought in someone who profiles just like Rashad White. So in my head, that kind of tells me that they're looking for somebody. Hopefully they're not looking at Bucky Irving to produce at the same efficiency as Rashad White last year, because that wouldn't be too great. But Bucky Irving profiles similar to Rashad White, which in my mind means that they think there's a possibility that they can get something similar, if not better, based on the archetype that Rashad White has and the skills that he brings. They also brought in passing weapons. Jalen McMillan is now stepping into this offense. Rashad White received a lot of passing volume, but you're bringing in more passing weapons, and Bucky Irving can catch the football too. I just don't think that Rashad White is going to see this volume that he saw last season. Keep in mind, there's a new offensive play caller in this system. He comes from the McVay system as well. And, he came from Kentucky as an offensive coordinator, but he was not an offensive coordinator in the NFL ever in his career. Assistant wide receivers coach with the Los Angeles Rams. He was an offensive coordinator in college, but he's never been an offensive coordinator in the pros. This will be his first time. And so we don't know what this offense will look like under him. Is he going to want to run the football more? And if he does want to run the football more, I don't think that bodes well for Rashad White, because it's going to be clear and obvious that Rashad White is not a very good running back. He's a good passing back. He's not a good running back. So I'm out on Rashad White at this price point. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Put your comments down below. Any questions, be happy to get to and answer for you guys. But that's going to do it today. We're going to do more of these going forward. Hit us with a like and subscribe, and tune into our live shows on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, typically around 6 o'clock Eastern time. My name is Pete Nova. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time.